Pilot Bill Green had flown in combat with Bristol's 501 Squadron for just 9 days, when his Hurricane was shot down and he was forced to bail out. As he fell to earth, Bill became entangled in his parachute.
I was quite certain I was going to die, and I was searching for my end through my thoughts of Bertha. I was continuing to try to push the parachute back, I thought forlornly, but the wind must have got under one of the folds and kicked the parachute open, and it kicked me back. And the quietude of that situation hits you more than any noise you could ever hear. And the whole thing was absolutely wonderful. I realized I was alive and looked around and saw the pylon cables level with me, realized I was near the ground, collapsed my legs and bent my knees, and bang, I was on the ground.
Bill's chute had opened just 300 feet from the ground. It was a miraculous escape, but the risk of being killed was increasing daily. Flying on patrol with 501 Squadron, Keith Aldridge found himself on collision course with the Luftwaffe.
The biggest formation of bombers I've ever seen. And I'm with 11 other pilots in fairly close formation, heading straight for them. I've got my finger on the button and it's firing, and these bombers are coming past in a flash. The whole operation is only 3, 4, 5 seconds of the utmost, I suppose. 5 seconds of firing, and you're through. And I think I probably closed my eyes the whole time through. And when I come out the other side, I can't see anybody. I can't see any aircraft, none of my own aircraft, none of the enemy aircraft. They've all gone.
Keith thought about pursuing the bombers when his plane was hit and burst into flames.
I was interested in getting out no matter, because when you've got flames coming up from your feet through up over your face, you aren't thinking very clearly, at least I wasn't. So I peeled out over the edge, and as anybody could have told you, you hit the tailplane on the way out, and you, if you're lucky, you only hit your arm and break your arm and shoulder, which happened to me. And then I'm free falling. And there's a moment of waiting for the canopy to open, and it does with a bang. The parachute pulls you up from 130 miles an hour to 5 miles an hour in no time flat. And inside no time at all, I was in hospital being treated. I was not far from Maidstone Hospital. And they treated me for burns and splintered me up on the big body cast with my elbows all stuck out. So that was my Battle of Britain.
Traumatized by his experience of being shot down, Bill Green returned home to Bristol.
I had only been married in June. It was the first time really I'd lived it with Bertha's parents, I think. I was in bed and I awakened to realise that I'd wet the bed. And I'd sat up in bed and shuddered like this. And I was so embarrassed being newly married, sleeping with my wife in my in-laws' home. And I'm sure that it was the reaction to the fall.
Not all pilots in the squadron were as fortunate as Bill and Keith. Michael Smith was shot down over France.
In those days, we had a little postmistress. It was a little small village, and we had a little postmistress who always knew exactly what was in anybody's telegram. I mean, she used to come up and say to my mother, "I'm very sorry that your aunt is ill," as she handed. But this particular time, she came up in tears. That was middle day on the Monday, and I didn't get back home to my parents' house until about 5. And it's a funny thing because I'm not in any way psychic, but as I drove up the drive, my father had opened the garage doors, which is a thing he never did for me. I mean, I had to open them myself. And I wondered, I had a sort of funny feeling that things weren't quite as they should be. And of course, when I went in, he told me.
Mary was told that Michael had been killed in combat. They had been married for just 7 months.
I did, of course, burst into tears. And I remember saying, no, it can't be, it can't be. And after that, I went really into deep shock. In fact, such a shock that I lost my voice for 2 weeks. I couldn't speak at all. It never occurred to me, somehow, that anything would happen. Shows how naive, you see, I was. But I suppose, like everybody else at that age, it never occurred to me that such a tragedy would happen.
Bill Green left 501 Squadron and spent several years as a flying instructor, but he was determined to prove himself as a fighter pilot.
I had thought, during the Battle of Britain, that my inexperience ill-equipped me, well it did, it ill-equipped me for doing what I had to do, so that I was shot out of it and wounded before I had a chance to prove to myself and anybody else that might be interested in my capability. I didn't want to leave this world with there being a doubt on my courage or my ability to fly in combat.
Bill returned to combat and flew many successful raids over France. He was eventually shot down and spent the rest of the war as a POW in Germany.
I was no hero. I know now that I was not a hero. You had to do the best you could under the given circumstances. And I feel very privileged to have been one of those people who happened to be there at the time.
After the war, Keith Aldridge continued his passion for flying, and he spent many years as a glider pilot. But he remains haunted by his experiences of combat.
There were a lot of heroic people in the Battle of Britain, but I wasn't one of them. No way. I think I had qualms about killing people. I know, in retrospect, I had a lot of qualms about killing. I'm not a killer, I don't think. I certainly don't enjoy killing. And the times that I have killed and known I've killed, they are times which come back to haunt you, and you're never the same man since.
Mary spent the rest of the war as a physiotherapist, treating troops at Windford Hospital. She eventually remarried and now lives happily in Bristol. She still has the letters Michael wrote to her over 60 years ago.
The letters I had from him, which I think there were about 20, I kept, of course, and have still got them. Meant a tremendous amount to me. But of course, you've got to remember, I had all those letters before he was killed, except the last one, which he gave to my father, which he called an iron ration. So obviously he knew that this was the letter to be given to me if anything happened to him, which of course my father gave me straight away.
My darling, dearest angel wife, this, as my precious wife knows, is just by way of being an iron ration, and only to be opened when she is feeling very lonely and depressed. So I shall start off with a short prayer that she will never even open it. Whatever may have happened from now till the time you read this letter, just remember that your husband literally worships, adores, and loves you more than it's possible for him to tell you. And his one big prayer is for the time when he can come back and look after his precious wife and make her always happy, laughing and singing. At the very time you are reading this, darling Mary, he will be thinking of you. Keep the $1 million smile, there's my darling. from your very loving husband.
When I reread it, I didn't cry, not after 64 years, but I was sad. It did sadden me, and I've had a very happy life since. But it's something that was an episode in my life that will never be forgotten. And in fact, that I was, sounds funny to say perhaps, but that I was really very proud of. I was very proud of him. He gave his life for the country, for me, and hopefully he thought, I'm sure, for peace forevermore.
The book, The West at War, 1939 to 1945, published by Sutton Publishing, is available from all good bookshops. Price $14.99.